Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I just wanted to bring a little bit more, I guess, context or perspective to the 49ers decision to trade Deebo Samuel. A lot of people I see in the comments were wondering why the 49ers could only get a fifth round draft pick for Samuel. And, was that a bad trade? There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I would say this. I think it's good for all parties. I think the Washington Commanders get Deebo Samuel for 1 year, $17.5 million. I think he's a good fit for that system, for that team, because Jaden Daniels is a guy who can put up 1,000 yards rushing. I would think, and I'm just kind of saying this anecdotally, I don't have any evidence to back it up. I would think that most teams play the Commanders with more zone defense because of his ability to run. The last thing you want are linebackers or defensive backs running with a receiver down the field. And then the next thing you know, Jaden Daniels is running up their back because he's broken the pocket and he's making big yards with his legs. So, we all know that Deebo Samuel is very good against zone coverage, not as good against sticky man. Therefore, uh, being able to get the ball in his hands quickly, bubble screens, whatnot, in breaking routes across the middle, that's where Deebo Samuel excels, catching the ball on the move, turning upfield, and getting big yards after the catch. Obviously, he did not have a great season last year. His catches per game was down. His yards receiving per game, those were down, and his yards per rushing attempt were down as well. But for the most part, Deebo Samuel for 5 seasons, 5.5 seasons, just go six. He's played 6 seasons with the 49ers. Certainly a lot more good games, a lot more good production than otherwise. So why do the 49ers benefit from trading him for a fifth round draft pick? A lot of it is financial. The 49ers have done this credit card spending in recent seasons where they're restructuring contracts, they're pushing out the cap hit further. Whenever a player gets a restructured contract, what they're basically doing is say a player has, I'll just off the top of my head here, just if a player is scheduled to make $10 million, what you can do is pay him a $1 million base salary, restructure it by paying him a $1 million base salary, converting 9 million of it to signing bonus, and then that $9 million gets spread out over the life of the contract. So let's just say if it's a 4 year contract, only what would that be? 2.25 million each year, or whatever it is, totally nine would count against that year's cap. And then the rest would be spread out equally through the remainder of the contract for salary cap purposes. By the 49ers taking on Deebo Samuel's $31 million in dead money, what that does is it wipes him off the books for the future. So, for instance, last year, the 49ers led the NFL in spending, in cash spending. They paid $334 million in player compensation. Well, the salary cap per team, every team last year was 255 million. So what they basically did was, in essence, they spent nearly $85 million over the cap, but that money has to count against the cap at some point. And so by that credit card spending, 49ers have made it their stated goal that they want to remain competitive. They don't want to ever get in a situation where they're tearing things down. They're going all in to win. And then if they don't, they tear it down and they start over. So by trying to remain competitive every year, they have to do some salary cap gymnastics just to make sure that it doesn't all come at the same time where, they have to take up so much room on the cap because of all the high priced players leaving at the same time. So by moving Deebo Samuel for a fifth round draft pick, they're saving the 17 million in real money that they would have spent on Deebo Samuel had he remained on the team, but they're also replacing him with a fifth round draft pick that will be uh, tied to the 49ers for 4 years. And by being tied to the 49ers for 4 years, that salary total will be just slightly more than $1 million a year. So, in other words, the player that they're getting for Deebo Samuel, who may be a good player, may not be a good player. But the goal obviously is to draft good players like the 49ers appeared to do in last year's draft, getting four guys with their first four picks that may very well be starters this coming season. So if the 49ers cash in on that fifth round draft pick and he's a good player, they would have that player under contract for 4 seasons, which is the mandatory years a draft pick can sign for. Can't sign for less, can't sign for more. So it's 4 years at a total cost of a little bit more than $1 million a year. So they'll get a player for 4 years at about 4 million as opposed to Deebo Samuel 1 year for 17.5 million. That also tells you why the 49ers weren't able to get a better draft pick for Samuel, because the Washington Commanders are acquiring him, but he only has the 1 year left on his deal. So they will be in a situation where they have him for 1 year, and then they'll have to decide at some point, do they extend him, or does he walk in free agency? And if he walks in free agency and is playing for another team in 2026, then the Commanders conceivably could get a compensatory pick, but that would be in the 2027 NFL draft, and they'd have to have fewer free agent acquisitions than free agent losses in order to even get that compensatory pick. So 49ers are in a situation where they have to figure out what they want to do at wide receiver. They have some work to do, quite obviously, with Brandon Ayuk, whose status is up in the air as he's coming off the ACL. Juwan Jennings, the 49ers' number one receiver last year, is returning. He is signed only through this season. Ricky Pearsall, first round draft pick, and Jacob Cowing. So when I look at where the 49ers could go, and let's just look at free agency first, here are two names to keep in mind, and maybe guys that potentially could fit. And I think this is the kind of players you're looking at. Keenan Allen entering his 13th NFL season. Might he get a good contract? He could, but again, 13-year veteran. Last year, he had 70 catches for 744 yards and 7 touchdowns with the Bears. It very well could be that he would be too rich for the 49ers' blood. Maybe the 49ers wouldn't want to pay that much for him. Another guy to keep in mind, and I think this is what you're looking at. You're not going to be looking at necessarily a number one or maybe not even a number two receiver, because everyone being healthy, you already have that with Ayuk, and you have that with Jennings and Pearsall. Here's a guy that I think would fit the 49ers pretty well. And again, it's a guy who would be entering his 13th NFL season. Robert Woods, last year with the Texans, had 20 catches, 200 yards, but for a short period of time, I think he can be a productive 3 or 4 receiver. And I think that that's what the 49ers would need. A veteran guy who's highly thought of, who's a good blocker. And here's the key. He has spent a lot of time, 5 seasons in Sean McVay's offense with the Rams. He's definitely on the downside of his career, but he's a veteran guy that could help, some of the younger guys in the room. Could be quite a resource for Pearsall, for Cowing, and then also 6 weeks from now or whatever it is, there's the NFL draft. And the 49ers couldn't be expected, I think, with the 11 draft picks to select a wide receiver at some point. So those are some of the options I think that the 49ers have at wide receiver. That's why, the downside of trading Deebo Samuel is that they're losing a good player. There's no other way to put it. A guy who has kind of epitomized the 49ers through a certain era, a unique player who did not have a good season last year, but did have flashes. I'm sure there are reasons why he wasn't as productive. It seemed, obviously, with him even requesting the trade, that thing had run its course. So it wasn't going to be prudent for them not to try to trade him after he requested the trade. But what they get in return is a 5th-round draft pick, which may or may not end up to be a good player, but they rid themselves of some of the salary cap burden that they have in the future. So that's kind of the take on the Deebo Samuel trade, and a couple of veteran players who could potentially fit with what they want. for the 2025 season. And then coming on Tuesday morning, I will have my mock draft 3.0. Um, Keep an eye on this one because on my last mock draft, I had the 49ers taking Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, at number 11. In my latest mock draft, I think he doesn't get there. I don't think that he gets to 11, which means the 49ers would look at a different position. Defensive line is certainly a spot where the 49ers would look. However, I'm thinking maybe an offensive lineman, just which is maybe goes counter to what I've been saying all along that, maybe they don't take an offensive lineman there. Maybe they can get somebody later. Um, they've always kind of looked beyond offensive line early in the draft, although the uh, the exception to that rule is Mike McGlinchey several years ago. But it's got to be a unique talent, and maybe there is a unique talent based on what he measured in at and what he did in the vertical, what he did in the 40-yard dash, the 49ers, the combine. It doesn't the workouts aren't all that important, but it does tell you about a guy's athleticism and the potential that he has. And the 49ers do need offensive linemen who are athletic and who can get out there in space. And maybe there's a guy with size and athleticism at number 11. So leave me your guesses of who I'm thinking about for that 49ers offensive lineman that they potentially could choose at 11. And then Tuesday morning, check out my mock draft at NBC Sports Bay Area to see if the guy I'm thinking about is the same guy that you're thinking about. So once again, thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like and a comment. And that is it for now.